right, we are here with Bianca Rech, director of FC Bayern Munich Women. How are you on this gloomy day?
Well, it's a nice day. Players coming back from national team break, so looking forward to the week.
Busy back into the campus. So let's start easy. Professional player, obviously you played with Bayern Munich as well. From being a professional player, how did you kind of start thinking about your future post-playing?
Quite early, I would say, because I got injured with 2 ACLs early in my career when I played for Frankfurt at that time. So I was around 21, 22, 2 ACLs back to back. And since then, I started already thinking what I could potentially do. Plus, at that time, you didn't have the chance to be a professional football player on the highest level and earning so much money that you were able to live with it. So I always had to go to school. I always had to do job trainings. I always had to do internships just to kind of find my way where I want to be maybe after my career, which could be potentially pretty quickly.
And how many options did you have when you were thinking about what you wanted to do after?
I saw myself as a coach at that time as well. I saw myself working in management, but I was not really clear what I want to do. So, I tried to be a coach once and never again.
How did that go?
Well, it was quite interesting, I would say. I think it was too early. After I finished my career, I jumped directly in a position to be assistant coach for a first league team, which was quite a tough time, I would say. We weren't that good in the league, so I felt quite quickly that this jump was too early for me. So I needed to, I would say if I could choose again, I would have stepped back first before I do that transition.
And that transition into team management, how was that from realizing that maybe a manager position wasn't for you and you wanted to transition into something else?
That was quite good. I felt directly that this can be something I would love to do. I felt my place is more in a management role off the field and not on the field. As well, sometimes it's nice to step back and just watch the game instead of being on the pitch and being a coach and being involved in all the emotions. And I felt that being in a management role, I could take so much from my playing career in terms of adaptation, in terms of motivation, in terms of how a team works. And I understand the players from different perspectives, and this helped me in my management role as well.
Were you always confident in going into that transition into a management role?
I would say not in the beginning. I think it's hard. It's very hard when you're being a player on the pitch all the time. You have your group. It's different emotion. It's very different. You're the football player, but when you step back. And then it changes from one day to the other, and you're kind of losing confidence because you don't know really where your place is. And this was a bit hard in the beginning, I would say. But it's a transition. I think you need the right people around you to help you. And this was something. I had friends, my family, which helped me in that transition. And because I started quite early during my career already to work in management roles. So it was not the hardest transition from just only playing football into working.
Yeah. Do you think those roles and those small jobs were kind of key to making yourself feel comfortable once you got to that position?
Yeah, absolutely. It helped me because it's an experience, a lifetime experience I made in all this, jobs and possibilities, and I think this brought me there where I am today.
And obviously we've talked about working in football after a professional career. Was there any other option other than that, or was it always going to be within football?
Interesting question. I was so much into football that I never really had to think of. I think there was one moment after my job training when I was younger, I was thinking to go to the police.
Okay.
So I made 2 tests there, but then I quickly found out that this is not really what I want to do. I felt that I want to be part of the journey of women's football in the future.
And that's 2 jobs now that you've tried and it wasn't for you. Do you, kind of explaining that to people outside, how key do you think that is to finding a place where you actually do belong, and how important is it for people to pick up these jobs that maybe they, give it a try just because, how key do you think that is for the progression of
It's very important. I even feel that today with the players, with the female players, because there's more money in the game, they're just focusing on football, that there are not so much more opportunities anymore to find out what you want to do maybe after your career. There's not so many options. There's not so much time anymore. But I think if you have the time and you can make the time, and they should make the time to really find out where they belong to maybe after their career. But this is a bit missing at the moment, I feel, because women's football is changing so quickly. So even young players who earning quite good money then can't really, or they don't really following another career path.
Yeah, I think that's quite evident, especially with the time consumed now within the schedule and everything, but that's a different conversation. Eventually you got to FC Cologne as your first, team management role in that first step. What was it for you to get into that position?
I finished my career at FC Köln. At that time, it was my hometown area. It was my lovely club at that time, and I had to support. And at that time, it was the right decision to do, to work in a management role, in a team management role. It was not the right decision to take over assistant coach role. Again, if I could choose, I would not do it again.
It was, I think that's definitely, but now you've established 2016, you moved to Munich to become the team manager at FC Bayern Munich. 2016 to 2024, there's been a lot of change in women's football. How was that decision to move into such a big club without really knowing what the future was for women's football?
I was working at UEFA before in marketing, and then the opportunity came up. Karin Dana at that time, she called me and asked me if I would be interested to come back, and so we discussed the possible role. And at that time, I thought it's the right opportunity. I played my career here in Bayern Munich as well. I saw the potential of the club, so I took over the team management role in the beginning, and then quite realized quickly that this club has so much more potential than we actually tried. What are we doing? I just, in my first year, I really tried to look right and left. So what could we do better? What do we need to do to really achieve goals? And then in 2018, I wrote down a strategy, creating a movement, which Karin and me presented to the board at that time, to make sure that we do the right steps to be successful, because such a club, such a brand, you can just play and see what happens. I think there needs to be a clear plan in place and a strategy, and at that point, I think it was the right moment to present. And with the movement of women's football, everyone could see it. That the board wanted to be part of it as well. So that helped us to one step after the other. And I think this was, let's say, the document we put on the table to be able to have the success we have now.
That was obviously right before the 2019 Women's World Cup, which was the first kind of probably big boom of women's football on a global scale. How do you compare what you had in place between 2016, 2018 compared to what you had in place probably between 2020 and 2024?
Yeah, I would say it's crazy. Even infrastructure-wise, we have been in Aschheim in 2016. It's outside from the city. We had to train there. We went for gym training to the Olympia Park. We went for lunches to the HQ. So we trained in the evening. So that was the start. Or when I came in 2016, that was the reality. In 2017, they opened up the FC Bayern campus. We moved in, and that changed, let's say, the world for us, because we had the possibilities to talk to players and provide them this infrastructure, and this was a huge change for us. So we moved in here in 2017. We got more stuff. We changed our training hours. We changed our training schedule. We trained in the morning. So we had everything here, what's needed. And from 2017, I would say, we had the possibility to change like our whole environment.
And how do you see the impact of that coming? Because obviously you started quite early when wanting to promote that change. Obviously change is never seen, especially on that scale, to be immediate. Are you satisfied with the progression that you've made since you first presented that to the board?
I would say yes, because sometimes it's easy just to see, okay, are you being successful? Are you winning trophies? But I think it's much more important to see the way, where we come from, what we achieved on that journey together. Sometimes it's small little details. You get a stuff more here, you do get stuff more there, you get food, you get lunch, like there are little things. Sometimes it might be more easy, to put the money on the table and change things from one day to the other, but this is not the way we at Bayern Munich works. It's the same on the men's team. We do step by step, and like a little bit of comes from a historical point, I would say, but this is the way we work, and I think it's in a sustainable way as well. And that's why I'm 100% sure that this is the right way to do it. It takes sometimes a bit longer, and sometimes, people get nervous and they want to see more. But yeah, I think it's the right way to do it.
In 2018, in that proposal that you presented, what was your main focus of change? What was kind of the one point that you really wanted to kind of
It was
get
not
across?
just one, I would say. No, it was actually the plan included more points, because I think it's not just one point. At that moment, it was about staffing the team around the team to be more professional. It was the youth development, which is an important part. And I still think we have so much more to do there. It's about how are we able to bring top players into our system, to our club. So there was a lot of things in that strategy what we needed to change. We needed to change structure internally as well, like where we ranked in the structure. But I think the biggest point was really the staffing point, because to make sure we have full-time professional staff around the team to make the environment for players better.
Yeah,
make sure you have full-time players. Every player needs to be full-time on board, gets the money to be able to be here in the morning and to be a professional.
And for you personally, that was kind of your first big role, especially for a club like Bayern Munich. Personally for you, what was that like to take on that responsibility, and what was it like for you? Maybe some challenges that you faced throughout. What was it? How did you feel in that moment?
Today, I always say I feel still very privileged to be here. Like every day when I drive into the campus, I feel the motivation, and this drives me. So the challenges, you always have challenges. You have everyday challenges when you come in the morning, and then you're sitting in a medical meeting and you hear, oh, a player is injured. So every time the environment changes, every day is something else. But it's the beauty as well, because you're not getting bored. The movement of women's football in general is huge at the moment. So there's so much things to do. We still have to do. I always say but we shouldn't forget where we come from. It's very important. The challenges is mostly people. You need to make sure you have the right people around you. You need to make sure that people are committed to it. And that starts on the top and it starts on the bottom. So, and there's a little saying our coach is always saying, and I think he's pretty right. You have to make sure you have the right people on the bus to be successful. So
I think that's quite fair. Obviously, you've been able to surround yourself in an environment that kind of propels you forward. Did you feel a lot of pressure at the beginning to kind of fulfill what you had expectations, like you had your own expectations as a player, you knew what you wanted, and then you knew the expectations that these players had and the expectations that the club have. Did you feel a lot of pressure on yourself at that moment?
Not really, because I was so motivated and I felt it was right what we're going to do and the journey, the road we're going to go. So for me, I never felt the pressure of failure. I never felt the pressure that this couldn't work, because I knew, I was 100% convinced that if we try to work better, if we get all the things we put on the paper, that we will get better. Pressure, well, I don't feel the pressure. Pressure is always there because, but we used to, as a professional football player, you're used to pressure. It just sometimes different pressure, let's say it like this.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's.
If you're enjoying your job, then you don't really think about anything else.
That's the
outside
point.
of that.
I would say I'm enjoying it so much. I'm enjoying it every day. Well, sometimes you have bad days.
Of course.
I think it's fair to say. You're losing games. I don't like to lose, but this is, my nature. But in the end, it's even losing. It has something good, because you just have to work harder, and maybe you have to think about it through why this happened and why this happened. So. But I think it's normal. And you can't win every game. This we have to say. Even we did it last year in the Bundesliga. And it's quite funny sometimes when you talk to the people and you tie a game in the league now, or you lose a game in the league. Everyone is going crazy and nuts around. The expectation is like so high. And I always try to step back from it. And I'm like, okay, calm down. I mean, first of all, it's good that the league is developing, that our teams might getting better. Yeah, it can happen. We have not a good day, and it's fair to say, or fair if we're not winning a game. But I think in the end, it's always important, as I have in my role, to see the bigger picture. I could go nuts and go crazy with the team and being emotional. Yes, I am emotional. I don't like to lose, but it's important to step back and to see the full picture and let's say to analyze it. But sometimes it's a bit hard when people get so nuts, and I'm like, come on, we just tie one game.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to have a bad day.
It's okay if that happens.
And obviously, Bayern Munich in particular has progressed a lot, especially in the Bundesliga, as in the Champions League. Obviously, Wolfsburg have been the big powerhouse, and now Bayern Munich have been competing with them equally, taking on the Bundesliga titles as well, going undefeated last season. What now? You've progressed so much since that 2018 proposal. Bayern Munich have gotten to the level, particularly within Germany, to be the best in the country. Obviously, Champions League, it's a bit more of a struggle, but you're still getting into the later stages of what is a Champions League, close games against PSG, for example. What now? How do you see, you're seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What is the bigger picture?
I think we still have to do something, and quite a lot. And when I talk about stuffing, I think when we do some benchmarks, we're still not on the top. I think this is one point. I think the way we play, the way with Alex as a coach, and how we, let's say, build a culture, I think this is the right way we go to at the moment. We were a bit unlucky, I would say, with injuries, but I always say I get a bit tired of telling, we're not lucky because of the injuries, but I think it's the case, and we will have more injuries in the future with the schedule in women's football. We all know what happened. But we have a goal, and the goal is we want to be in a Champions League final at one point, and we want to win the Champions League final. The comparison with Wolfsburg, I think it's sometimes a bit hard because they have been successful for such a long time, the last years. So I even say, we need to go there. We're not there. I mean, we won 3 titles in 4 years now, but still, there's still a way to go, and we have to prove every year. And it's easy to win it once, but you need to win it twice and 3 or 4 times. And this is what Wolfsburg did in the past. So yes, we are on the way, and we managed to win against them, but they had a great past, and they're still there. So and there are always tight games against them. But we try not to look too much towards, you know, what is Wolfsburg doing. We really want to create our own way of doing things.
And one of those is, you know, the stadium that we see here, it's filling it up. You know, you do get a lot of crowds here. It's filling it up consistently as well as everything. Are you happy with the reception that the team has gotten in general?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, we love our stadium, to be honest, and the players love it. And I think it's a great atmosphere, but we have to be honest, it's a 2,500 stadium. We're not allowed to bring in more people, which is quite sad because it could fill maybe around 4,000. We did that in the past once or twice. And this year we have 100% sellout until now. Yeah. Even, let's say, against teams which are not on the top level, we sell out. So it will be hard, right? So at one point we need to think of, and we do already, we have to think of where are we playing in the future. We all know Allianz Arena with 75,000, it's huge. Yeah. It would be nice to have something in between, but there's not so much in the area. There's only the Sportpark Unterhaching, which is number-wise, spectator-wise, a good size. But it's not in Munich. But still, it's probably the only one option in that area. So that's what we thinking of, what we have to think in the future. It's needed because, yeah, there will be sellouts a lot more this season, hopefully. But we need to make sure that these fans are following us as well into our stadiums. Yeah. And we need to grow our fan base.
Yeah, it's definitely happening with other clubs. Barcelona with the Johan Cruyff and the Camp Nou, it's kind of the middle. Arsenal and with Meadow Park, Chelsea as well. So it's not kind of, you're not alone in that. But how
it's not easy. I mean, look at Arsenal. They have the Bournemouth at their home stadium, and then they have the Emirates, which is too big, and you see it as well now with their crowds they're having in Champions League or league games. They're not selling it out anymore. So it's a tricky question because it's a costly point as well. Yeah. I mean, to play a game in the Allianz Arena, it's so expensive. Yeah. And then when we talk about sustainability,
it doesn't fall into that.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the battle of needing more than what you have, but not having the space to be able to have that? How do you deal with kind of that block of progression, and how do you work your way around that?
You mean especially on the spectator wise?
Yeah, especially because you're trying to bring in more people to support the team, but you don't have the space. How do you work around keeping people around and at the same time trying to bring new people around?
Well, it's a little bit. We had a project with our fan department, who was used to just take care of the men's fans, and we had a good talk to them last year to make sure that they're taking over about the women's fans as well, because there is a bit of a different fan base, which is good for the club. So even traveling to away games, that they can go in groups, that, you know, we're making sure that we have like one selling point for tickets for FC Bayern fans when they want to go to a match in Essen, or when they want to go to a match in Frankfurt, that they just not buy a ticket and sit somewhere on the tribune, so that that we manage them to bring them together. I think this is one of the big steps we did last year to being able to grow this fan community, I would say. And this is, you can see, we have a huge crowd at away games, which is great to see, and we can see the development of the amount of fans coming and traveling to our games. So this is the away game topic, but if we talk about the home game, sure, it's quite hard. So we really try to have the season ticket holders to make sure that they're being able to get, let's say, the first option to get tickets for different games. But it's only 2,500 and we can't provide more. So we really try to think about bigger solutions.
Social media is obviously a big part of kind of developing the fan engagement overall. Bayern Munich has a very, very big following on social media, which is not common in women's football. No matter what the club, it's not necessarily, a given, no matter what club you play for. So that is a big aspect of it. How do you think that's been developed over the years, and how key has that been for you in your position to kind of see the progress of that?
I think there are two sides. In one hand, social media helps to grow the visibility of the club, the brand, our team, the players. And I think the number, when you look at our numbers, it's amazing. It's crazy what you can do with these numbers. And there's so much potential towards partners, sponsoring, the way we reach fans, even when we talk about our documentary, I think there's a lot of potential we can still use. We're not maybe using it. I think there's still potential to use it much better. But then you have the other side. Players reading every day after a game. You have haters, you have fans. It's something which you never had in the past, and this is a big part for players as well. I think we have some players that use it very, very good, and you have players that don't use it so much. But that changed, and I think the environment of a player changed as well. And with all the impact of social media, it's sometimes not that easy, I would say.
And in terms of growth and promotion, what's the big next step for you and for Bayern Munich? What's the next proposal that you're gonna give?
Well, the next step, I think we really need to get more sponsors and partners on board who really want to be part of it, who really want to drive it, who want to really come in and be part of it. We have a lot of different projects. We have our mentoring project with the players. We will have in the new season, 25-26, we will have a good game in the Allianz Arena. So there's a lot of plans, a lot of interesting projects. But on the sporting side, we want to go far.
That is ideal. Is it hard to get partnerships in women's football?
Years ago, you always had to be a partner on the men's team as well to be able to be partnering with the women's. So we broke that a little bit. So there are more possibilities now. You can be a women's football partner only. You can still be part of both. So I think this helped us to grow our partner foundation, let's say. And it's great to see like Audi or Allianz or Fissmann. So to be able to create something really, really good with them.
And obviously women's football has been growing at a rate that I think nobody really expected. Not in a bad way, but it's so unpredictable in the past few years, especially between the Euros in England, then the World Cup, and then another Euros coming up.
Absolutely.
It's kind of not unbalanced, but it's a roller coaster.
There's not a clear, let's say, plan. There's not a clear measurement. When you sit on the table and before the Euros and you talk about numbers or you talk about plans, and then 2 years later you're like, okay, well, it wasn't the way we predicted it. So it's quite hard, and that makes the market is hard, I think, when we talk about players, when we talk about negotiations with players, with agents, because the market is quite unstable, and that's the danger of it as well. And we need to make sure that, I always say, we need to make sure that we're not going the same direction as men's football. Yeah,
I was going to get to that, the kind of comparison, which is an unrealistic one because men's football has got into an unrealistic standard that it's not really the standard to abide by. Everyone's like, yes, we want to be like men's football. It's like, no, that standard has gotten so unrealistic that it's just an unhealthy kind of reach to it. So women's football has to find its own kind of standard to it when it comes to salaries, when it comes to money, partnerships around the game. What do you see as kind of like the future, especially because we have the Euros next year? Do you think that progression is going to be able to be a realistic positive one, or do you think that potentially it's kind of plateaued at the moment?
I hope we have a positive direction. I really hope with the Euros we have a change in the Champions League format. There's a Club World Cup coming in. There will be a World Cup again. So there's a lot of happening, big tournaments, big projects in women's football in the next 4 to 5 years. Women's football is the most scoring sport in the world at the moment. So there will be a lot of potential for everyone. But we need to make sure it goes into the right direction and not into the wrong direction.
What's the biggest challenge that you have when you work towards that?
To keep your feet on the ground. I always say to my players, and in general when people ask me, we all need to make sure to remind ourselves where we come from and why we're here now. This question we need to raise, and to make sure we keep our values, like we're being authentic, loyal, honest, we're close to fans, because that was the route we took the past years, and that's why we're here right now. But we need to remind ourselves, and I always say we need to keep our feet on the ground, because if not, there will be a big bubble at one point, and then it will just blow. So,
you should give a TED talk to everyone involved in women's football. So.
I mean, I try to do my own job in my club, and especially with the players and the people around, to remind them about this. And it's important to, let's say, it's an easy example, but that our players help our kid manager to put the stuff out of the bus. Or these are little things, and sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, come on. But I think it's so important to...
The environment in women's football is it's
culture.
Very definitely. I think I had this conversation the other day of how someone asked me how different it is, especially from a media perspective. How different is it in the men and women's, and in women's football you still have the togetherness of the people that you work with, especially when you know someone has the right intentions. You want to help them, you want to be part of that, and it is quite nice. But obviously on a business level, it's not always as nice
not easy.
as it is, next to the pitch, next to the group. How do you deal with that difference of having to deal with, you have your home, you have the people around you who you trust and you confide in. How do you deal with people outside of that environment to try to convince them to help you?
I said it in the beginning. You need people who are committed. You need people who believe in it. And I try to make sure that I have these people around me. And if I don't have these people around me, I try to convince them. But just only to a certain point. And I think this is the way I always worked. So I really try to push.
Yeah.
I really try to convince the people, and sometimes, not always I always try to be in a nice way. Of course.
Until you can't anymore.
Yeah, until I can't anymore. But I try once, twice, and 3 times, and I stick on it, and I try to push. So, yeah, I never give up.
Do you see that a lot in the environment that you work in? Other people in your position?
I think the people who have been in the position for a long time, because they did the work before me. I always like to mention Karen Dunner. I think if she wasn't here at the club and pushed so much for the good things in the club, I think FC Bayern women's football wouldn't be at that level it is today. And I have people around me, or like people in organizations who pushed for a long, long time. And I try to do the same, and to kind of build the way for other people who come probably after me, and to make their lives maybe a bit more easy.
You have to deal with kind of imposing yourself to something that you believe in, but not necessarily someone else believes in it in the same way.
Yeah, it's about convincing, right? Because I have been in the game for such a long time. I was a player myself. I'm being in the game. I see the opportunities. I see the development, and I'm so convinced about it. Sure, and you have people on the table. They're not. They don't even feel it.
Yeah.
And this is why I try to really be very authentic, even when I talk to partners, to really to deliver the vibe of, you know, being part of women's football, being part of that journey, that they really actually can feel it.
And looking on a bigger scale, when you compare it to the WSL, who has a lot more money when you compare it to other, you know, you compare it to Spain, France, Germany. Germany is still, you know, probably, I would say probably number 2 in European leagues in terms of development and infrastructure of that. But when you compare it to the WSL particularly, when you look at the partners they have, the money they have, how do you see that as a possibility for the Frauen Bundesliga?
Well, that's a good question.
A whole new podcast.
A whole new podcast. I think the difference here is that the FA had an idea at one point after the Euros and before that, how they can drive women's football in their country, because I think the German football in the German league was always on top. And was always in front of them. But then they had a clear plan. They had a strategy where they want to go with their league. And that's why you can see the success now. So they did the right steps, how they can do it. They had the commitment of the clubs. And I think there's a huge difference. When you look at the German league, I think 2011 is a good example. We always thought it will go like it. We will be successful, it never changed, we will be the top in Europe, no problem. But it was not, because we didn't invest enough. From a federation side, we didn't invest enough money. There were no structure changes, because we always thought we're okay. And then we lost track. And now we kind of, you know, try to swim quite fast. But I still see the potential in our league, because we have amazing players in our league. We have players coming especially to the German league because it's so competitive. When you ask me what is the difference, I think clubs, the money the clubs investing into the game, the money which was invested by the league years ago. And this is a huge difference from what happened in Germany. Yeah.
And how do you think you can impact that? Obviously, you can impact that coming from a club perspective, because you're carrying, you know, Bayern Munich. It's probably that sensation that you're going to be okay, because German clubs in particular had so much success in Europe that surely, you know, this can't go wrong because we're the best in Europe and nothing can go wrong from that.
It's kind of arrogant, I would say.
I think it's realistic, though.
It's realistic,
okay. No, but you obviously see now, you know, Potsdam, you know, has won the Champions League, was, you know, kind of a big...
there was a very big traditional success.
Frankfurt, you won it with Champions League with Frankfurt, but then had to go into Eintracht to be able to kind of continue the development of that. What problem do you see in that when you look at the success that German clubs have had in the past in Europe and kind of the reality of the league overall?
Yeah, I think the club structure is, compared to England, very different. We have smaller teams who are not being part of a man's environment as well. When you look at the German league in the past, we had a lot of clubs like Frankfurt, the Potsdams, Duisburgs, with like standalone women's football clubs. But with the development of women's football, I think this is not possible anymore, because with the money in the game, with the money which is requested to be able to compete on the highest level, I think for a standalone club, it's quite hard at the moment. And not just because of money, it's more about infrastructures. Because, as Bayern Munich, the infrastructure we use is, I think, one of the top infrastructures in Europe as well. So, and then you have other clubs, they don't have that. They don't have the staff around the team. We don't have professional players in the league. We don't have a minimum salary in the league. So there's so much to do on a league level. If we're being able to fix that, I think we can do a huge step. The question is here how we can do it. I think we will able to do it, but we need to have everyone on board, and we need to have the openness for that. And this is it's definitely not easy, but we work on it with a lot of clubs together. As well, we work with the DFB, because we have to make sure that we're all going into the right and the same direction.
How do you feel, Bayern Munich, Wolfsburg are kind of the two leading in the Bundesliga to kind of progress that? Barcelona has done the same with Liga FA. It's not necessarily a league that can keep up with them, but they've proven that this is the way to go, and they've been successful with it. Arsenal has been a good example of that as well in the WSL. They can sell out Emirates Stadium, but Chelsea can't. So there's always, there's clubs pushing the standard forward, probably a bit faster than what other clubs can. How do you think that power balance between the big clubs and the lower clubs, and how do you think the effect is going to be in the long term?
I mean, Arsenal I like because they're kind of a role model as well. They have been successful in the past. They've been in women's football for such a long time. So it's in a sustainable, healthy way. They built their women's football department as well. But yeah, you're right. I think you can see it already when you look at the top clubs in Europe who are competing in Champions League, and you look behind and you know where money is coming from, then it's a little bit the same as we have in the men's game as well. We don't have an US investor. We don't have an investor from wherever. So we talk at that, in the same vein, we talk about different financial models. And that makes it sometimes harder for us as well to keep up with these clubs, to be able to talk to players, because it's a different financial model. But we try to do it in our own way. But the gap is going to be bigger, sure. But we need to make sure that this gap is not getting too big, that we're not losing the foundation as well. And this needs to be considered to have even I don't like the word smaller clubs, but the clubs who don't have the financial power to be able to compete as well, because we will need them.
Yeah. To be able to progress as a whole, as a league, you kind of need that. And it is, the Bundesliga is a competitive league, despite, all the differentials of what is finance and what is structure, because I think people don't realize how much of an impact that actually has on the day-to-day to players. As easy as having a chef or a nutritionist or a kit manager, or, instead of having one person that has to deal with, the team management of overall, having maybe 2 or 3 people to kind of take different roles, it impacts the players a lot more. And how do you see, on a realistic scale, maybe one on a kind of a dream of how you want
scenario,
a dream scenario of how you want progression to be over the next few years, and maybe another realistic one on a business level.
Okay.
Which one do you want to start with?
It doesn't matter. I have to answer both, so
we'll start with the business level of the realistic kind of progression of women's football in the next 5 years. How do you see it, and what do you think should be the focus around that?
Yeah. There will be more partners. There will be more money in the game. We just need to make sure that this money goes into the right, let's say, structure, and not just investing in players. We need to invest in infrastructures. We need to make sure that players being professionals. I always say, my dream is that young girls having this dream to be a professional football player. I mean, I had that too, but it was maybe a man player, right? Yeah. So
the reality of wanting to kind of follow it just as any career.
Yes.
As you follow, you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school, you lawyer, you study that. To be a professional footballer, you dedicate your career to that, to wanting to be that.
Yeah. This is one point. But still make sure that you think about a second career path, that there's still room for it, because I think it's important. And when I think about business, it should be our goal to be sustainable as well. With all the money is coming in, and the money is going out, a goal should be sustainable at one point.
Is that hard to come across in this day and age, especially when you have men's football alongside you that kind of went away from that sustainability?
It probably depends on the clubs. It depends on the people, how long they want to invest in women's football and how much they want to invest in women's football. And I think it should be all our goal to be sustainable at one point and not rely always on money from your club. Because you don't want to be a side business. You don't want to be asking for money all the time. It would be great saying, we can do it because we're actually getting this money in.
Yeah.
And we have these investments from partners and sponsors who are really able to bring the money and to be able to sustainable.
And from the fun side, the dream side of women's football, in 5 years, how do you see women's football and how do you see Bayern Munich?
Oh yeah, that's a good
in
question.
In a sold-out Allianz Arena.
A sold-out Allianz Arena, that's my dream. Yeah, that would be a big dream, to be honest. And I think it could be manageable. But that we're not talking about anymore are we being able to fill a stadium with 2,500? We're not talking about, is there minimum salaries for players to get more young kids, more young girls, to be able to play football. And not just here, it's just around Europe and around the world. That is something normal and that every little girl have the possibility to play football.
That the future is secured.
Yes.
More or less. A big dream. We'll come back in 5 years and we'll listen to this again and see how we'll test how the progression is.
Okay.
But for now, I'm done questioning you with everything. I really enjoyed that, and hopefully 5 years we can say that you've checked off a lot of that list.
I really hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.